Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Juan. I'm a registered migration agent in Crystal Migration.
And my name is Ross, and I'm an immigration lawyer at Crystal Migration. And today we are discussing why are student visas being refused. It's a topic that we wanted to bring to the attention because there's obviously been a number of changes, specifically talking about the genuine study test. So we'll talk about that today. But I suppose what prompted this episode really is there's been a number of inquiries that we've been getting from migration agents, lawyers, and also students saying, we had our student visas refused. So it does appear to be on the rise just because we are getting a lot more inquiries. So we really need to look into, I suppose, what the changes were, going from Direction 69 to the new Direction 106. And I also want to touch upon what happens in that unfortunate event if a student visa gets refused.
Right. So Ross, I think we have to start off with speaking what the government introduced, going from the genuine temporary entrant requirement to the genuine study requirement. So Direction 69 versus Direction 106. Is there any difference? Like any substantive?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because let's briefly talk about Direction 69, which was the genuine, the GT requirement, basically genuine temporary entry requirement, where basically, without going too much into the intricacies of it, but it was you had to prove as a student that you're coming to Australia on a temporary basis to study a course. That really was the core foundation of a student visa, and the whole point was so that people don't kind of use student visas to prolong their stay. But I think because there was so much discretion around what's assessed, the government then said, well, maybe let's just focus on the study. And that's when Direction 106, the genuine study test, was introduced. But your second question that you've asked, what's the difference? That part is a little bit more difficult to answer because if you actually read them back to back, they sound almost identical. The only difference is the word Australia is removed and it says how the course will benefit you in any other country, and it removes the reference to the intention of returning home, and there's a bit more information about sort of the study pattern and how that should be assessed. But other than that, when you read them together, they actually sound almost identical. So the title's different, but the actual direction, in my view, there's not much difference to it. So I think that's sort of what this new direction's trying to fix. But I think we need to talk about, what are the top 5 reasons why student visas are being refused.
So, top 5 reasons why student visas are being refused here in Australia. I think, Ross, let's start from the 5th one. Let's do
let's do a bit of a countdown, I'll let you get started.
Yeah, so let's talk about the 5th one, which is ghost courses or ghost schools. That's something that at the beginning I didn't even want to either believe if that existed because I never had the experience or came across with. So apparently there are some schools out there that they're actually not school at all.
Yeah, look, it's and not to name and shame, I'm going to be very careful in terms of what I say on my podcast. For example, there is a school where I have seen examples. So I've seen personally where individuals come in, they get their papers signed off, and then they leave. That's it. So that I always be sort of walking past it, and I'd be thinking, why are all these people lining up? Can they not just go to class? But they are quite literally getting their papers signed off, and they leave. So that's kind of one example, and then sort of I suppose that's a bit of an extreme, and I also don't want that to be taken out of context in terms of saying that all sort of cheaper schools or whatever are ghost
Yeah,
schools.
yeah.
So I think it's important for audience to understand that that's an example of an incident or an event that I personally saw. So that's by no means the interpretation of every school.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Reason number four. So we have placing here the 5 year period. And what does that mean? People that have been in Australia for more than 5 years or 5 years and they are still on student visas.
mm,
And a lot of the time that won't make sense to the case officer on the visa application that this person has been in Australia for 5 years. 5 years, with that time, you can complete a whole bachelor's degree.
yeah, or even a double bachelor degree as
Yeah.
well. So
And unfortunately, a lot of people have made several courses already, have completed a diploma in here, a diploma in there, an advanced diploma here, another advanced diploma in there, and then like when you're going to
diploma of
count,
leadership and management,
oh my god,
communications,
I
and
know,
and all of the other ones. But I think it's also important to note. We're sort of discussing off camera before the 408 example. So if you've been a lot of universities are saying no to issue confirmation enrollment if you're on a 408 visa, because by the time that you finish your course, it's going to be over 5 years. So what the department, and I think this is the important point, that seems to be more from a policy point of view. The department looks at your overall stay, including the visa that you're
Yeah.
going to get. So if, let's say, you've been here for 4 years and you're going to do a 4 year degree, well, that's 8 years in total.
Oh my god, I know. And the 408 visa, you specifically speaking about the COVID visa stream in this case. I mean, obviously, it could be any, but I think right now we're seeing a lot of people coming off their
Yeah,
COVID
look,
visas.
I'm
Yeah.
using that as an example, but
Mm.
it's any visa. It
Any
can be
visa,
working
yeah.
holiday visa. It's just, I suppose, the 408 in the pandemic event stream is probably the most common because it was free.
Yeah.
Lots of people applied for it. Lots of people still hold it. So yes, a lot of them are going back to student visa. So it's not that. And again, there's that misconception. I'm glad that you brought it up, that you're not being refused a student visa because you hold a 408 visa. You're
Mm.
being refused a student visa because overall your period of stay in Australia exceeds 5 years.
Yeah.
So you could have held a 417 visa for all you know,
Yeah.
or maybe you held another type of visa.
Yeah.
But I think the 408 visa probably would be the most relatable example.
Yeah, and that reminds me, Ross, of an example that we actually have in the firm of this person that applied for a temporary visa, not a student visa. But then it got refused, and in the refusal, the officer quoted the time the person has been in Australia that exceeds
Yeah.
5 years. So obviously, we're speaking now about the student visas, but it could apply as well, like you're saying.
Yeah,
Like,
100%. We also had another example at the AET where, and we spoke about it a couple of episodes ago, where a person was refused a student visa and then their case got remitted back to the department for reassessment, because one of the arguments that were put forward is when they finish their course, the overall period still won't exceed the 5 years. So there shouldn't be a concern about
oh yeah,
the genuine
Yeah.
temporary entrant, and when she sort of did the calculations, when you finish, it'll still be around 2.5 years, so you're still under that 5 year mark. So I think it is. We've placed it as reason number 4 because at the end of the day, look, it's discretionary. It doesn't necessarily mean that just because someone's been here for 5 years, they're not going to genuinely study, because remember, it's no longer genuine temporary entrant, it's genuine study.
Yeah.
But it places a weight in terms of, are they actually studying or are they using a student visa to achieve some sort of other motivation outcome?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it comes to planning ahead, and this is what I was saying recently in a consultation with a student visa refusal, that applicants, students, and everyone have to have a vision and plan ahead of
Yeah.
what they want and calculate if they're gonna, go over 5 years and still being on temporary visas like a student visa.
Yeah, 100%.
And that brings us to reason number 3, downgraded courses.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
Well, you can look at it from two sort of angles. Now, first, there's a visa condition on the student visa that says that if you downgrade, say, from advanced diploma to a diploma, you have to apply for a new student visa. So basically, if you do that, you're in breach of your student visa without applying for a new visa. So that's part one. But I suppose when you apply for that new student visa, say for example, you were going from advanced diploma to a diploma, we would have to lodge a new student visa for you.
Yeah.
But the concern here would be showing the genuine study, because one of the reasons for refusing that subsequent visa is the fact that you're downgrading a course. So you need to explain how, well, I mean, it's sort of logical. How are you going to learn more by studying a course that's
Yeah.
simple?
Yeah. Now, reason number 2, course progression, or when there is no progression, I should say.
There's like a progression, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think this is really important because what are you looking for? I mean, if I want to study, I obviously want to progress.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to advance somehow. And if the courses are not, taking me anywhere, or perhaps I complete one course, but then the next one is not going to take me any further, why then? Like, what is the purpose of that?
yeah, exactly. And look, at the end of the day, I think it's also important. Again, you're on a student visa, so obviously, what's the purpose? So I personally can't see myself ever studying again. I feel like I've done enough. But if you're going to go back and study, you obviously want to sort of learn new skills. You want to maybe sort of learn a new sort of path. So yes, it does need to make sense in terms of the progression. You need to you need to elevate your particular knowledge.
Okay, let's now give examples because I feel that it is relevant right now to give examples of this case when a course is not progressing you or taking you anywhere in your life. So, for example, if we have an accountant that has 10 years of experience and they suddenly come and want to do a diploma in marketing.
Yeah, and that's a good example. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're doing accounting or even a bookkeeper, let's say, for example. So it would probably be a non-client facing role. And there wouldn't be a need for you to do, well, marketing in a sense that you're marketing a product. So that would be a good example for why you would refuse an application. And now we get to reason number 1. Yes.
So reason number 1, Ross, not completing previous courses / changing courses.
Yes, and it was actually quite difficult to pick, well, what would be the number 1 reason, and we've sort of asked each other a question. If you're a case officer, why would you refuse an application? And we both said, well, if you're not completing the course, then why are you on a student visa? And there's so many examples. I had a client a number of years ago. They were on a student visa for many years, much more than 5 years. And they've had in excess of 10 different confirmation of enrollments, and the visa was naturally refused. And there was a reason as to why they weren't completing the course. But I think it kind of gets to a point of where, look, reasons do arise why people don't complete the course. But I think if you're just seeing a pattern, someone's starting and finishing, and not finishing the course, someone's changing the course, that's not really the intention of the student visa. And it's really important to keep that in mind. And I suppose as Australian citizens or permanent residents, we take it for granted that, well, you and I, we can start a course and finish it or not finish it. But if you're on a student visa, you have a visa condition that tells you you have to finish the course that your visa is tied to. And if you're going to change your course, or if you're not going to complete it, there'll be ramifications for your next visa.
Yeah, absolutely. That takes me back again to what I was saying before. I think we have to advise clients that they have to plan.
Yeah.
They have to map out the strategy and what is going to be the course, how the course is going to make sense. Complete the course,
Exactly.
not change your mind.
Yeah.
And in that sense, though, like, I know that the policy allows people to change their mind and perhaps change completely the career path. First, you have to justify it very well,
Yeah.
and secondly, uh, maybe do it once and I mean change careers once, justify it, and go ahead with it.
And
But
pitch it. Yeah, exactly.
but we have seen many refuses lately where when you read the people's resume or the history
It's
in
all
the
over the
student,
shop. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
all over the shop. They started with leadership management, then they moved to painting and decorating, and then they moved to early childhood. And then they didn't like early childhood, and they canceled the theory. And
So they became
now,
a carpenter afterwards.
and it's like, how does that make sense?
But you know what? It's interesting that you've mentioned, because I you know, the number one question I get asked is, what course should I do in order to get permanent residency? And I absolutely do not like answering that question, because first of all, there is no course that you can do to get permanent residency, because immigration policy changes. And secondly, you shouldn't be doing a course and expecting that you're going to be handed permanent residency.
Yeah.
That's kind of not how immigration works. So this is why we do see sometimes you look at the resume, and like you said, someone's a painter, then they were early childhood educated, then they've gone and became a chef.
Yeah.
So it just becomes it does become borderline ridiculous, and I'm laughing because it literally does not make sense.
Yeah.
So to then be granting another student visa, it doesn't come as a surprise that the case officer looks and goes, well, this person is clearly you. So we're going to be careful here, because you can apply for a another visa onshore when you finish a student visa. You know, go to your 485, for example. But also, you shouldn't be using student visa in order to get to that stage. And that's that very fine line that people tend to cross.
Yeah. So yeah, these are the 5 reasons, or the main 5 reasons why student visas get refused. I think we're gonna have a part 2 of this episode, and we're gonna speak about the solution.
I was going to say, but I want to know what the solutions are for. How do we solve? Well, not necessarily solve, but what do we do? And our second part's going to feature the solutions or possible options of what happens when your student visa gets refused, and how to deal with that.
Yeah, that's really important. Thank you so much, and see you next episode.
We'll see you next episode.